Every night at midnight, the bell of St. Hollis Church rings by itself. No one dares go near it anymore, because the last people who tried to find out why never came back. Tonight, you'll hear what they heard. Welcome back, everyone. If you've been here before, you know what to expect. One more story to keep your lights on tonight. And if you're new here, welcome to the dark side of the channel. I tell real-sounding horror stories, ghosts, curses, the strange things people find when they shouldn't be looking. So grab your blanket, get comfortable, and maybe don't listen alone. Because once the bell starts ringing, you'll want to make sure it's not coming from your town. Let's begin. The Choir of Bones. The church bell rang just after midnight. No wind moved. No hand pulled the rope. Yet the bell tolled, low and hollow, rolling through the fog like thunder from an empty sky. The sound made windows tremble, dogs howled, and people, half asleep in their beds, whispered the same words they'd whispered every night for a month. "It's ringing again." By morning, the villagers of Merrowfield gathered in the square, staring at the crooked spire of St. Hollis Church. No one dared go inside anymore. The priest had left weeks ago. The doors were locked, the windows boarded. But still, the bell rang. Old Mrs. Gray said it was the souls beneath the church, the ones buried without blessings after the plague. "They sing to call us down," she croaked. Most laughed her off. But that night, when the bell rang again, 3 boys decided they'd prove her wrong. They'd sneak into the church, climb the bell tower, and see what made the sound. They never reached the tower, because once they opened the door, they heard it, faint, soft, and terrible. A choir, 100 voices singing from beneath the floor. No one knows why the dead begin to sing, but some say the choir grows louder whenever a new listener finishes their story. The fog never left Merrowfield that autumn. It hung like old lace over the fields, hiding the crooked fences and the empty road that led to St. Hollis. The church had stood there for over 200 years, built from gray stone that sweated when it rained. People said you could smell death inside its walls long before the bell ever rang on its own. Mara Densley didn't believe that sort of thing. She was 16, sharp-eyed, and stubborn. Her father was the town's blacksmith, a practical man who had no patience for ghost tales. But even he couldn't explain the bell. "The wind," he said the first week it happened. "It's got inside the tower somehow." "The rope's been cut," Mara reminded him. He'd frowned, then went quiet. By the 3rd week, no one came near the church after dark. Children whispered that the bell rang for whoever would die next. When a farmer collapsed in his barn after hearing it, no one laughed anymore. And then the 3 boys disappeared, the ones who'd gone to find the truth. That was when Mara decided to go herself. It wasn't bravery, it was anger. One of those boys, Will, had been her friend since childhood. The sheriff searched the woods, the river, even the graveyard behind St. Hollis. Nothing. Only the church, standing crooked and silent by day. But at night, it sang. Mara waited until the moon was high and the fog thick enough to hide her. She carried only a lantern and her father's small hammer. The air smelled like wet stone and ashes. As she climbed the path to the church, the ground softened under her boots. The grass here never grew right, too pale, almost silver. The bell gave one soft toll. It sounded closer than she'd ever heard it. Her stomach turned, but she kept walking. The great wooden doors of St. Hollis loomed in front of her, bound by a rusty chain. Someone had nailed Dew shut after the boys vanished. She crouched low, pried one nail free with her hammer, and slipped through a crack wide enough for her thin frame. Inside, the air was cold. Not the kind of cold that came from the weather. This was the kind that sunk into bone. Her lantern light swayed across the pews. Dust floated in the air like drifting ash. Every sound echoed too loudly. Her steps, her breath, even the faint creak of the lantern's handle. At the front stood the altar, covered in a torn white cloth. Behind it, the floorboards were darker, as if stained. Then she heard it, faint like a hum under the earth, a low note, then another, a melody forming. Voices. Mara froze. The sound rose from beneath the altar, soft, layered, mournful. Dozens of voices singing in a tongue she didn't know. She stepped closer, every hair on her arms lifting. Hymn sounded wrong. Notes stretched too long, as if the singers had forgotten how to breathe. The lantern flickered. The voices grew louder. Mara knelt by the altar and tapped the floor with her hammer. Hollow. There was space beneath. She found a loose plank at the edge of the dais. When she pried it up, a gust of cold air rushed out, damp and foul, smelling of rat and something older. Below, a stone staircase led into blackness. She swallowed hard. "Well," she whispered. Her voice trembled. "Are you down there?" Only the singing answered. She lifted her lantern and began to descend. The steps were narrow, worn smooth by centuries of use. Her light flickered on the wet walls, showing faint carvings, crosses, eyes, strange looping marks that didn't look holy at all. The deeper she went, the colder it grew. The song swelled around her now, echoing off the stone. It was clearer, almost beautiful, until she realized she could hear teeth clicking between notes. The stairway opened into a crypt. Rows of stone coffins filled the chamber, stacked against the walls. Some had lids, others were open. Bones lay scattered across the floor like driftwood after a storm. And in the center of the crypt stood a bell. Small, not like the one in the tower, made of iron, dull and cracked, but it pulsed faintly, as if breathing. Around it knelt figures, dozens of them, Skeletons, still wrapped in scraps of priest robes and funeral shrouds. Their jaws opened and closed in time with the hymn, though no flesh moved, no lungs drew air. The sound came from inside their skulls, a deep hum that made the ground tremble. Mara clamped a hand over her mouth. The lantern shook in her grip. She stepped backward, and her boot struck a bone. It snapped loudly. Every skull turned toward her. The hymn stopped. Silence filled the crypt as heavy as stone. Then in one motion, the skeletons lifted their heads and opened their mouths wider, far wider than they should. From their throats came a single long breath that sounded like the bell tolling above.
Mara stumbled backward, fell against the wall, and dropped her lantern. It rolled across the floor, the flame dying. Darkness swallowed everything. Something moved in that darkness, dry bones scraping, a faint hiss of dust. "Mara?" A voice whispered. She froze. It wasn't Will's voice. It was older, broken. "Join the choir." "No," she gasped, crawling towards the stairs. Hands caught her ankle, bony fingers cold as stone. She kicked, striking something that cracked. The grip loosened, and she scrambled upward. As she climbed, the voices rose again, furious and loud. The song twisted into a scream that rattled the stones. She burst through the trapdoor and slammed it shut, shoving a pew over it. The wood beneath her shook with the pounding of bone. Then, silence. Mara stood in the empty church, panting, clutching her hammer. The bell tower above her creaked once. She looked up and saw the rope move. Something was pulling it, but not from the bottom, from above. Through the holes in the ceiling, a pale hand gripped the frayed rope. Another followed. A face leaned out. Not flesh, not bone, but something between. Its hollow eyes found her. Then it smiled. The bell tolled once more. The sound knocked her backward. The floor split. Boards cracked open like thin ice, revealing the crypt beneath. From the darkness below, hands reached through, dozens clutching at her legs, her arms. She screamed, swung the hammer, breaking bone and wood alike. But the more she fought, the more hands came. The hymn rose again, shaking the air. It wasn't just beneath her now. It was everywhere, around her, inside her head, behind her teeth. The lantern's glass shattered. The flame flared one last time, lighting the pews, the altar, the cracks in the floor, and the faces rising through them. One of them was Will. His skull still had bits of hair. His empty mouth moved with the song. Mara. Her hammer slipped from her fingers. The floor gave way, and the church swallowed her whole.
In the weeks that followed, Marrowfield grew quieter. The fog thickened until it never lifted. People left one by one, locking their doors and taking the road out of town. St. Hollis still stood, though no one dared go near. Its doors hung open now, swinging with the wind. Every night, when the fog was thickest, the bell rang again. Those few who stayed claimed they could hear new voices in the hymn, younger ones, a girl's voice among the dead. They said the choir had grown, that it sang not just to call the living down, but to keep them there. Sometimes, on the stillest nights, the song drifted through the town square, soft and slow, like a lullaby made of bones. And if you listened long enough, you could hear one voice rise above the rest. It sounded almost alive.